на всички и е време за една от най-вълнуващите срещи на Комикон. Това е един от най-уважаваните скулптори и художници във филмовата индустрия. Негово дело е емблематичният шлем на Дарт Вейдър. Къде е той? Нямаме го тук, никой не е облечен с него. И завършителните елементи по C-3PO, който също е с нас някъде в залата и можете да се снимате и да вземете автографи от него. Нека да разберем повече за Брайан Мюир и каква е неговата част в създаването на филмите за Джеймс Бонд, Пришелецът, Индиана Джонс и Храмът на обречените, Хари Потър, Планетата на маймуните, Мисията невъзможна и какво ли още не. Много се вълнувам и очакваме и вашите въпроси. Нека посрещнем Брайан Мюир. Hello.
Hi.
It's such an honor talking to you. I hope you like it here in Bulgaria and that you're feeling well.
We love what we've seen so far. I'd like to see a lot more.
Well, I hope you do. So, let's get started. Take us back to the beginning. What first drew you to sculpting and model making?
Well, at the age of about 13, I discovered that I could draw and paint at school. And I spent a lot of time in the art room and slowly progressed. And then when I was going to leave school at 16, I thought I'd love to do something in art. And my mother knew someone down in the youth employment office, and she said they are going to start an apprentice at Elstree Film Studios. So I went along and had an interview, and she said they want someone as an apprentice model maker, and I thought I'd be making little models like that if I got the job. But she said, well, they've turned down 12 people so far, so don't hold your breath as such. But a week later, after the interview, a letter plops onto our doormat. I opened it and I had a 4-year apprenticeship at Elstree Film Studios. So at the age of 16 I was a professional sculptor. So I started very early. I had 4 years going to art college in London, doing life drawing, life modelling, wood carving, lettering and a few other subjects. And I was working on small British films. They were only small, low-budget films. And then, the very day I came out my apprenticeship, I was made redundant. They got rid of me because there was no film work. The British film industry was in an absolute mess. They were making no films. So I went and I thought, oh no, my career's finished before I've started. But luckily, again, I got a job up in London, doing prestigious work over London. At the age of 20, I'd work on Bound by the Queen of England. 22, I'd work on Bound by the Queen of England, and I did lots of amazing work all over London, until eventually, few years after, I had a phone call. Would I go into Elstree to work on a film? The film being Star Wars. And they said to me they have some strange characters they want sculpting. Over to you.
And do you remember when you got on set for Star Wars back then? Do you remember if you or any other team member actually had the feeling of the cultural impact that you would have many years later?
We had no idea whatsoever. There was only one other sculptor with me for a short while, Liz Moore, who did C-3PO, and she left the film to be with her boyfriend. He was head of special effects on A Bridge Too Far out in Holland. So I finished all her work. But no, the crew thought it wouldn't be a very good film, judging by other sci-fi films that had gone before. But we were all proved wrong when we went to the crew showing in 1977. And we were all sitting there and you see this huge spaceship come overhead and it got a little round of applause. And then at the end of the film, everybody, it got a standing ovation from this same crew that thought it wouldn't be any good. And we realised that we had been working on a film that was ahead of its time, and it was amazing. And I must admit, it was satisfying for me seeing my characters on the film, especially Vader coming through the mist, and yeah, it was quite a time for me personally.
I imagine the world changed that day, but do you remember the first time you saw any of your designs for the first time lit on set, prepared to be filmed? Do you remember if that differed somehow from your original concept?
Well, there was other work that I'd seen on stage or set before that, but they were the first actual characters that I'd worked on. So it's a whole new thing, because if you're doing architectural work that is part of the set and it makes you believe it's a palace or a castle, or just an old house that's got lots of decorative work, which is in the background and can be out of focus. But when you're doing a character, the whole character is in focus all the time. So it was a good thing to see.
How did you work with Ralph McQuarrie and the costume team in Star Wars? How do you collaborate?
Well, we didn't. I never met Ralph McQuarrie ever.
How is that even possible?
So, the Stormtroopers were based on Ralph McQuarrie's concept art, apart from the back, because there was no concept for the back of a Stormtrooper. So I had to make it all up. And the strange thing, on the back of the Stormtrooper, is there one about? No. Oh, there's one over there. You'll see a cog. There's a panel on the back, and there's a cog one side, and then there's two small oblong shapes. And I've heard all sorts of explanations as what they mean. And at the time, because Liz had left, I was the only sculptor left. I worked for 76 days without a day off. So I thought, well, for that panel, I'm going to cheat. I went down the prop room, I found a little cog and two bits of wood. And I thought, right, I'd sculpted the panel in clay. So I went back up and I stuck the cog into the clay on the left and the two bits of wood in. So really all it means is that I saved a bit of time and nothing more. But I've heard all sorts of things about what it means.
And we have a special question for a member of our audience about the Stormtroopers. Why are they white? Why this color? Why did you choose a color that historically and symbolically is assigned to something pure or innocent or something like that, and it's not a camouflage uniform, they are fighters? Why are they white?
Well, that was above my pay grade, really. George Lucas decided that one. But it's probably partly because the material, which is like a plastic, because they were all vacuum formed. Because it was the first Star Wars was quite a low budget film, and it was how do you do all those 50 costumes as quickly as they needed them? And the answer seemed to be vacuum forming, and the material is white. So from my point of view, I think a lot of it has got to do with the fact that it's a low-budget film and they didn't have to paint it. They already had the white material.
It's so iconic till today.
That's me saying that, but I couldn't say that for 100% as the reason they're white.
Okay, and what do you think makes those costumes and those designs, like Stormtroopers and Darth Vader, so iconic till today?
I think Vader's the one that is really iconic. I mean, the Stormtroopers is a well-liked character. Most people love Stormtroopers, but Vader is the one that is iconic. It's a single person, and just the aura that Vader gives out. And Dave Prowse, they didn't use his voice or anything else, but his presence, his stature, he looks so powerful. In fact, Dave said that the only thing that George Lucas ever said to him in the way of direction was, "Don't walk so fast." And the reason being is they thought he'll stride out and make the character powerful, and the reason George Lucas said that is the camera on the track couldn't keep up with him. So it was just a practical thing that slowed down.
And that made him even so much more impressive. Okay, and did the final design of the helmet differ in any way from your original idea?
Sorry, I didn't quite get the question.
The final design of the helmet, does it differ in any way from your original idea?
You asked me about Ralph McQuarrie's designs. Well, with Vader, the mask and helmet weren't to Ralph McQuarrie's designs at all. It was a small drawing about so big that I got from John Mollo, the costume designer, and John Barry, the designer on the film, overall designer. He said, "Well, you go down to John Mollo, he's got a little sketch for you." And he said, "It's a new character, and the name of the character is Darth Vader." So I went down to the wardrobe and saw John Mollo, and he had a tiny little sketch, just a simple line drawing from one angle. Well, I have to make it work 360 degrees all the way round. It has to look right from every direction. So I had a big input into what it looked like. So a lot of the design was down to myself. And John Barry would come in and he'd have the orc thing. It was him that said about putting the tear ducts in Vader. But it's very much a team thing with all of that. So I sculpted Vader, so I created the shape, the form. But then after I finished with it, the mould makers, the plasterers, they make a mould of it and they cast it in fiberglass. Then they're to finish with it. So you get the painters, they do the paint job. And they realised that it couldn't just be black, because you would lose it on the film, you wouldn't see it. So they then, by hand, painted the nose silver, bits of gun metal on the cheeks and that, so that you would read the form of the mask more. But, so yeah, special effects, they did their bit. Wardrobe had the cloak made up. Dave Prowse rode a motorcycle, Triumph motorcycle, and he had some gloves and boots. He wore them on as Vader as well. So very much a team effort.
You said earlier about your first impression when seeing the film, but did you have the chance to witness the audience first impression when seeing Vader, for example?
Sorry, I did.
Did you get the chance to witness the audience's first reaction of Vader?
Well, only when we went up to see the film as a crew, and I didn't have to look. I could feel it all around me, that everyone was so excited that the film was so good. But I think so many of the public, and I've had such good response to fans all over the world, even in China. We went to China twice in 1 year. We went to Beijing to do Beijing Comic Con, then we went to Shanghai. And the Chinese had only had it for 5 years, but they were mad about Star Wars, especially the young ladies. So although I had my wife with me, I had several young ladies wanted a hug. And I just had to oblige.
I can understand that.
So, yeah, I mean, yeah, it's loved all around the world.
How much difficult it is not only to sculpt, to make a mask or helmet, but to actually imbue it with personality?
I was told by John Barry before I ever started it that he wanted it to look sinister. And I think the Widow's Peak on the first one, which accentuated the eyes, achieved that. I don't think it was quite so sinister on Empire, where they filed that off. It's the same helmet and mask, but they filed that off and they made the chin vent bigger, and they made the paint job much shinier and finished. Whereas on the first one, he wanted the spaceships and Vader, everything to be battle worn and, you know, not totally pristine. So it did change over the first three films. Even on Return of the Jedi, the wire that's in the strip, they filled that up, filled it in, so it was just solid strip right the way down, and made the chin vent even bigger than Empire.
And would you change something now? Like, if you have a chance now, would you change something?
I've been asked that a few times actually, and I always say no, because it's so iconic. Who am I to say I would change it?
You are actually the only person who could say that.
It's the way I feel. I wouldn't change it.
And is there
in fact, it was changed. My one was used for the first three films, and then for the Sith they re-sculpted it, and I had nothing to do with it. But they had 6 sculptors worked on it for 2 months, whereas I did the first one in about 3 weeks. But they spent because they had to have it totally symmetrical, whereas mine had character. It wasn't perfect, but it had character. But the fact that they actually made it totally symmetrical took the character away from Vader. And most people, there are people that probably like the Sith Vader, but there's an awful lot that come up and say they don't like it as much as the original. And personally, from my point of view, not just because I did the original, but I prefer the original to the Sith because of the reason that it has more character.
And is there a piece that you made that was filmed that you took with you home? You took it home and now you have it.
Sorry, I'm struggling with it.
Me too. Is there a piece you made in a film that you afterwards, after the film was filmed, that you take home with you?
No.
No?
No, I kicked myself not for having a Vader out of the original mould. In fact, when I was working on Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, we were working in the Star Wars problem. And there was a huge Jabba the Hutt sitting there, and there were boxes and boxes of Stormtrooper armour. And I was naive at the time. I didn't know that props were worth lots of money or anything. Not that I would have taken one anyway, but I saw guys, while we were working on the film and doing work for Temple of Doom, I'd see guys coming in, rifling down the boxes. And it was only later I found out that there were several Stormtrooper suits that went missing. And I know that a Stormtrooper, an original one now, will take £200,000 to £300,000. So they are worth a lot of money. So yes, I do kick myself for not having an original Vader out of the mould, but I never have. But the only 2 times I did was on a Bond movie. And it was one of the Bond movies where I did some masks. And James Bond is on a skating ring, and there's 3 skaters going around him with these masks on. And I got these plasterers to cast a couple of these masks just to take them home for the kids to play with. And they stopped playing with them, and I thought, oh, I'll throw them away. I threw them away. God knows what they would be worth now.
You've worked on many famous productions, and we are here talking about Vader's mask, which is normal, I guess, but is there a piece that you're particularly proud of, other than Star
Yes.
Wars?
There are lots of pieces that I've worked on, and I think that, yeah, that's a nice job. One of them was for Temple of Doom, the opening sequence where you see the gong, and there's a Paramount Mountains going across, and then on top of that you have a dragon. Well, I spent 2 weeks sculpting a dragon that went right the way around, with the Paramount Mountains that went across the middle, and it really did look nice. And then when I finished it, the art department came down and they said, lovely job, but we can't use it. The Paramount Mountains, we've given you the wrong scale. We can't pan back from that. So what you see on screen, I had 2 days to sculpt, whereas I spent 2 weeks on the previous one. I mean, it does the job, it looks okay, but I didn't have much time on it.
And which piece do you think is the most underappreciated of those you did?
Oh God, I mean, because you're a professional sculptor, I've done lots and lots of lovely work, but there are films where you say we get bread and butter work, whether it be a rock face or trees or whatever, where you don't enjoy doing them. There's no pleasure in looking at it afterwards and thinking I've done a lovely job with that tree or that piece of rock. It's just what it is. You get paid, you do the job. So that's the sort of work where I don't look at and think, oh, you know. Or there is a thing that once the camera starts rolling, you can be on a film months before the camera rolls, and the designers or art directors can be fussy, unnecessarily so sometimes. But as soon as that camera starts rolling and you've got the film crew there with the actors, there's no holding them up. So they'll give you a job to do. We want that, we want it yesterday. So you've got no time to do it. You do the best you can in the time.
Did you ever have to fight for a concept or an idea?
Did I have to come up with it?
No. Do you have to fight with the producer or the director to keep a concept or an idea you had?
No. I mean, they're the power. They say they want something, it happens. So you do the best you can with the time you've got, with the concept you've got. I mean, sometimes you'll get a scribble and you're literally designing it in 3 dimensions. Other times you might get, for say on Alexander the Great, I did a 14-foot king with 4 wings. I had a little picture about so big from a book, and I've got to draw that up to 14 foot and then sculpt it from very little information on you know, the small picture I've got. So it varies on every job you do and every film you do.
And what is the most unusual subject you had to create?
Sometimes when Lost in Space, we had these really strange trees to do, and these pods, and it's just making up something that is just nothing it's not of this world. You're making a new world up, so yeah, that's quite unusual. But usually it's, I mean, Octopussy, all the Indian palace, they go out and shoot an Indian palace out in India, then all the interiors, you have to make that believable. So that's done back at Pyramid Studios. But all the architectural work that makes it look realistic and believable all has to be sculpted. In fact, there was a scene on that. There's a big sweeping staircase where Bond's being chased by the muggers, and he decides to make it a bit quicker, and he gets on the handrail with the sweeping staircase to slide down it. Well, he's halfway down and he realises there's a pineapple at the end of it, an ornate pineapple which I'd sculpted. And he thinks I'm going to do myself some damage here, so he gets his machine gun and shoots this pineapple off the end, and it, only as Bond could, he slides off the end of the railings and saunters off through the set.
Okay, how is the role of the traditional sculptor changed throughout the years?
Throughout the years, it was pretty much the same. The only thing that changed it a little bit is when CGI came in.
I was about to ask about it.
So, in a way, it was a good thing, CGI, because it made directors and designers more ambitious as to what they could do. So they would actually build to a level, and then they would have the props. But using CGI, they could extend it right up or right across. I mean, for Gladiator, you had the whole of Rome on the film, which was using CGI. So I think CGI, used at the right time, is a great tool, and it enhances a film, as long as you don't get carried away with it, which George did on number 1. And it was nearly all blue screen, green screen, and the actors had nothing to work with as such, and it makes it for them hard to give a good performance. So they moved back away from that and created sets and everything again. The other thing is the 3D printer, which is in direct opposition to the sculptors. And I worked on a film called Thor 2, and they had the palace where you had these huge columns. You had the 3 balls for the grandfather, father, and Thor, which I did those. But they had this ornate panel to do, which had stood about that high. Really, a lot of work on it. But unbeknownst to me, the construction manager set me up. They got the 3D printer to do it, and they got me to do it. So I did my panel in 4 days, and the designer wanted it all aged, so I could really age it well. And then the 3D printed one come in, and it looked very nice, but it wasn't aged, so the designer got another sculptor to try and age it. So because it's plastic, as he's knocking it, bits just fly out, and it's not graduating as it should do if something is aged properly. And then they discovered that it was 1/8 of an inch too wide. They got it slightly too big. So I quickly took a 1/16 of an inch in the clay, 10 minutes, I'd done it. But they would have had to spend another 2 weeks feeding it through their computers to redo it. So the designer said, that's it, no more 3D printing on this picture. But the 3D printers have got better and better. And again, it's a bit like CGI. Used at the right time, 3D printers are great, especially doing small scale work.
Do you think the time for practical effects will come back in fashion?
To a point, and the sculptors are still there doing the work, but I think I retired at the right time 8 years ago, and I see it online that they're doing some lovely work still. It's just more limited as to what they're doing now.
Is there a practice or a trick or some technique that you personally developed that is now used?
Well, with polystyrene, I mean huge figures. I did all the big Russian statues for GoldenEye, which 2 of us carved. So you're working out new techniques all the time for carving huge lumps of polystyrene, using hot wire to go all around the templates, so you're getting rid of all the waste. And then when you do it with hand, I developed on funny enough, it was on Aliens. I developed this huge nail brush, which had never been used, so I could use it to rip the polystyrene away very full to do the form. That was something that was developed. But for polystyrene, there are always new tools and new ways of doing it. I mean, I had a butcher's knife that I bought second-hand when I was just an apprentice early on, and I've still got that knife, and that's about nearly 60 years later. And that knife has done so much work. It was so sharp, I could really cut polystyrene sharp corners with it. So I used that knife a lot. In fact, on one of the Harry Potter's films, I was being lazy. I had a nail brush in one hand, and I had this knife in the other hand, and I was scrubbing away and went right into my wrist. And it was doing that, blood was coming out. So I put my hand on it, run to the nurse, and luckily by the time I got there, it had stopped. So, but yeah, that was a bit of a scary moment, and it taught me a lesson, because doing wood carving, you never carve towards your hands. You always carve away from yourself. But even then, after years, you make a silly mistake like that because you're tired, you want to get it done quick. So yeah, I stuck myself.
Everything went fine. What's one thing that the public doesn't understand about your profession?
I'm struggling to hear.
One thing that the public doesn't understand about your profession.
I don't know. Unless you're actually doing it, you've got to do it to really understand it. I mean, I have so many people actually say to me, "Why have you retired? Why aren't you doing?" Because I've not sculpted since I retired. And I said, after 48 years of churning sculpture out, I'm not doing any more. And they say, "Why aren't you doing any more sculpture?" And I ask them what their job is. They do. And they might tell me whatever it is, a bus driver or a carpenter or what. I said, "Would you do your job for the fun of it when you've retired?" And they all say no. Well, there you go.
Is there a character that you dreamed of designing but you never did?
Yeah. No. Because I'm happy with the career I've had. I'm satisfied with the work that I've done. And I don't have envy of other work. I can look at someone else's work and say, that's a lovely job. But I don't think at the same time, I should have done it, or I would like to have done it. No, you've made a good job of that. And I don't feel that I should have done it, or I can do it better, or I would love to. Yeah, I suppose sometimes you say that I would like to have done that, had a go at doing it, but not really.
If any of your work could be displayed in a museum and you have to choose which one, which would it be? A piece of art you did to be displayed in a museum?
There already is.
Of course
in the
it
British,
is.
What? The V&A, that's it. The V&A, they've got the Stormtrooper and they've got Vader in there already, or Vader might be in the Science Museum. So they're already in museums. No, nothing to do with me, other than the fact that I did them in the first place. But yeah, they're in there as pieces of art now.
And I have a last question for you, and then I will asking the audience. But what would Brian Muir's action figure look like? If you were an action hero, what would your action figure look like?
Right. That's a first. I've not been asked that one before. I never really thought about being an action hero. I mean, I've worked on a few. I worked on Superman. He was an action hero. I suppose that wouldn't be a bad one. Yeah, Superman would do me.
Great choice, I would say. Окей, сега ще се обърна към вас. Да. Искаш ли микрофона?
Hello. My question is, where did you get the inspiration to do the sculpture of Lord Vader's mask?
Well, as I said earlier, I did have a drawing to go from John Mollo, the costume designer. But it was something that was developed, the design, in the sculpting. So that's as far as it goes, really. I mean, I didn't only do the mask and the helmet, I did the chest armour, the shoulder bells and the shins as well. And then, as I said earlier, it was a team effort to do everything else. And it was a team effort in the way of John Barry and myself. I mean, he didn't do any sculpting as such, but he would come in and suggest things, even like as small as the tusk that come out past the mouth line. I had it level, and he said, well, let's bring that out a quarter of an inch. So, I mean, there was input from John Barry, the designer on the picture.
Yeah? Okay. Wait till she finishes. All right. Hi. It's Ken again. I've been cosplaying Vader for 30 years now, so the people who tell you never meet your heroes, I can tell them eat my shorts. Because he's my hero right here. Just some things that I gathered during the course of the production when you were talking about the 011 on the back of the stormtroopers. I don't know if you know, but that's actually been vindicated or acknowledged or validated, whatever you want to call it, in the recent Andor TV series. There's a scene where there are troop carriers carrying stormtroopers to an event, and on the vehicle itself is stenciled that cog and those two lines. So you're being perpetuated.
Right.
Beyond your initial efforts.
I've learned something today.
Yeah, well, you think it's all in the past, but it's catching you today. The next thing I wanted is something that you can tell people the next time they tell you the stormtroopers, why are they white? They ask you, why are they white? You can tell them that originally it was George's idea to reverse things, put them on its head. And the bad guys would be wearing white. All the bad guys would be wearing white. And then you can say even Vader's outfit was originally white, but he just hadn't washed it in 20 years. Next thing I wanted to ask is, I totally forgot. So the fourth thing was if you care to donate a tiny piece of the spotlight, and I was wondering, because you would be the only person qualified, to say one or two words about Liz Muir.
Liz I was very fond of. I knew her from going to union meetings up in London, but I worked with her for only a month, but she was a lovely lady. She was very well liked by the plasterers and crew, and John Barry, the designer, really was fond of Liz. She went to the same art college as him, but some years after. But yeah, Liz was lovely, and she left this world too early.
Very much. Yeah, she got cheated out of everything here. For those not familiar, Liz Moore was the one who designed the helmet of the Stormtrooper, whereas this guy did everything else. So it was a team effort.
Yeah.
And the last thing, I did remember what I wanted to ask you when you said you wouldn't change anything about Vader. Are you sure that you wouldn't put back the Widow's Peak?
Yeah. The widow, I sort of that when I was talking about it, that the Widow's Peak made Vader look sinister, and they took that away by taking the Widow's Peak away, by filing off. One thing you might not know is the fact that there isn't the original A New Hope Vader, and they used it to make it into Empire Strikes Back, because the supervising art director told me that one of the first things they did when he started on the picture is they went up to a big unit, they had stuff stored, and he said the first box he picked up had Vader in it. And what they actually did, because they knew that that fitted Dave well and he'd worn it all through the first one, and they were changing it, they actually changed that. All they had to do was file that off and make the chin vent bigger, which was just filing the cast. Then it was repainted. So the original A New Hope Vader does not exist.
Actually, I remember the original Vader you sculpted to go all the way around Dave Prowse's head, right?
It did. The mask, I did back and front.
Yeah, I remember seeing photos of that too. All right, I'm taking enough of your time and everyone's time. I just want to thank you so much for everything you did. I'm forcing myself to get out of host mode here. This is not my job. So take care, everyone. I'm turning you back to your regularly scheduled host.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ето.
Hello.
Hi.
What was the biggest piece you made ever in your career? What was the biggest sculpture you made?
The biggest? Well, it's... I mean, the 25-foot figure was quite a big piece. The space jockey, which stood 26 foot high, was quite a big piece. All the big Russian statues were quite big. And then there are rock faces. You can have rock that probably goes across 50 foot by 35 foot high. So that's big. But when you're looking, I mean probably a 25-foot figure is quite big. I enjoy doing the big work, actually, the big scale work. I also enjoy doing the fine stuff. It's not quite physically so hard. I mean, on that 25-foot figure, that was on Clash of the Titans, and I went out to Malta for 6 weeks. And I was working, we didn't have a workshop, so I was working in the sunshine. So it must have been about 85 degrees or about 32 degrees. And because it was polystyrene, I was using nail brushes, I would go home looking like a snowman. And there was always a thing they'd say in the industry when we were working with polystyrene. And they thought it was the first time it had ever been asked, but they'd say, do I use Head and Shoulders, which is a shampoo that gets rid of dandruff. So each time you get asked that question, you laugh as though it's the first time you've heard it. So I think I've replied.
Някой друг има ли въпроси? Ето.
You know, you have worked on a lot of different movies and settings, and you have designed a lot of things. And my question is, what is the... sorry, can you hear me? Yeah, okay. My question is, what is the strangest piece of merchandise you have seen in your design now? Because like Darth Vader has some t-shirts or things, what is the strangest piece of thing?
The strangest piece I don't... That's a hard question to answer just out the blue actually, but you are asked to do some strange stuff on film work. But as long as you've got a design for it, you do it, it's no problem. I mean, well, I probably heard the question wrong.
Това е неговата съпруга. Аплодисменти за нея.
I'm sorry, I've got the question there. Oh, I think they're called Pezzes. Pez, they're like a sweet thing. I've seen them on them. There's so much that's merchandise that's out there, and you are surprised sometimes at what you see. I mean, even all the little Vader figures in the boxes you get. Some of them have got or even bobblehead Vaders you get. So yeah, there are some strange things out there on the market, but you just accept it and take it as a compliment that they like your design and the character. Really, it's not all me. It's the actual Vader's part of the film, and quite a character.
Някой друг? Имаме въпрос.
Hello. I was wondering, what piece of advice would you give to an aspiring sculptor that's only just now starting out? Thank you.
There are a few things actually. Never be afraid to copy work. By that I mean architectural work, or whatever style it is, copy it, practice, practice, practice. Because when I went to art college, the students there would say, well, you're not an artist, you're just a craftsman. But it was funny actually, a few years later, those same people that were saying that were phoning me up to try and get work. So you can go through art college and there are hundreds of people that do, but to make a living in fine art is extremely hard. And you have to try and find prop work, film work, theatre work, or whatever it is. And you have to be prepared for that. So copying, whether it be someone else's design or whatever, don't be scared to do that. But also take photos of all your work. Build the biggest portfolio you can, because that's what will give you your first job. I mean, you have to make the best of it, do the work they want and do it to a good standard. But if you've got a good folio, that's what will hopefully get you into the film industry or wherever you want to go with it.
One final question.
Yeah, okay.
If anyone has one final question.
Which movie that you worked on was the most fun to work on?
Fun. To pick one out, I couldn't, because there are so many good pictures I worked on. I enjoyed the Indiana Jones trilogy. I enjoyed the Bond movies. But I'll turn it on its head. I'll tell you the worst film I ever worked on. And it's a bit of fun actually. And the worst film I ever worked on was Superman. And I'll tell you why. It started off at Ray Studios in England, and then they moved out to Italy. From Italy they gave that up and they moved back to Shepperton Film Studios in England. That's when I started on it. For 6 months I worked on that film. Every single job I did was scrapped, because they changed directors 3 times, they changed designers 3 times, so that the new designer on the film would scrap all the work of the previous designer. So for 6 months I worked and every single job I did was scrapped. Then we were laid off. I was laid off for 2 months, and then when they moved to Pinewood, that's why everyone got laid off, they moved to Pinewood. That was their last move. But in Pinewood, I had the Fortress of Solitude was huge, like icicles, all crossing one another. And I was working in the tank, in the Bond stage, in the winter, and there's an underground stream that goes under the tank. So there was about 2 inches of water in the tank. I was using Variacs, which is electric. I was getting shocks all the time off of this Variac. And it was a miserable time. It was freezing cold, no heating in there whatsoever. So yeah, Superman was the worst film I ever worked on, and I was glad to finish on it.
Благодаря ви много за въпросите. Thank you so much for
Thank you.
talking with us. It was a pleasure and an honor.